Hello and welcome to GuyLogicGaming. My name is Demko, this is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and we're going to take a look deep and hard at it. This game came out a while ago and I'm only now getting around to reviewing this title, so let us go ahead and do just that. It's the third installment in the series of the rebooted Lara Croft franchise by Square Enix, and in many opinions, it is a damn good one. My opinion? That's pretty much true, so let's go ahead and dive into some options, details, PC performance, and then into some gameplay. As always, if you are not interested in such, you can skip ahead to the gameplay segment. But for now, options and settings. If I head into options and touch the audio and languages, the most interesting bit is the subtitle colors as well as the closed captions that are available. Both of them are really damn cool. Now, voiceover immersion, which is the reason why I like subtitle colors and closed captioning, is the fact that you can turn on native speaking languages for many characters, which creates a quite interesting mix of immersion. Now, if you, like me, don't like having multiple languages spread throughout, it generally creates a bit of a disconnect for me when gaming in a language I don't understand. Turn this off. But if you want to be immersed in a more South American culture and language and sort of cadence, instead of everybody speaking English, even though they're from a long dead civilization, then this is your option of choice. Environmental subtitles, subtitle colors, and closed captioning are all really cool because they display subtitles for conversations taking place nearby or display audio cues for things that are happening. So if something's happening in the background, you hear grunting or something exciting happening, you have these additional cues. This is really interesting for people that may be deaf or have hearing problems, or just you can still get quite a bit of the experience out of it in terms of interaction. And you're gonna need it because this game is very chalk heavy on the cutscenes, which is something I don't enjoy that much. You also have dynamic range and everything else related to it, so overall a really solid audio options menu. If I go to GamePad, you can play with the GamePad. Obviously the game came out on console as well, though I would not say that is necessary on PC or even really recommended. The keyboard and mouse are absolutely fine. If we head over to gameplay, there are some general settings for camera move, aim mode, button press repetition, what it really does, and overall difficulty, which is really interesting because you can set a difficulty rating, not just for an easy, medium, or hard, but you can also set different types of exploration or puzzle difficulty separately. So if you're really interested in hard puzzles, but you don't give a shit about combat, you just want to get that out of the way, you can lower the combat difficulty, raise the puzzle difficulty or exploration difficulty, and that is damn cool. Now, if you're curious how exploration difficulty or puzzle difficulty work, I'll show you a little bit further on in the video and give you some examples and things that might be different on a puzzle or on an exploration trail. Really damn good. And then there's survival instincts and glow for things. If you do turn on survival instinct, which is sort of a superhero eyesight, that you can also turn off if you want to get a little bit more of that overall immersion experience and a little bit more difficulty. All the other options, pretty damn cool. If you head over to display and graphics, this is really all we care about on this channel, so let's take some time and really soak it in. DirectX 12 resolution options for every single thing under the sun. Full screen, exclusive full screen, really good. This is borderless windowed normally. You can put it on multiple monitors, you can change brightness, all these other things. VSync, obviously turned off. You can play on a higher refresh rate, there is no locking. You can have HDR, there's anti-aliasing in SMAA, TAA, SMAA, TX2, and SMAA 4 times, really fucking solid, no complaints whatsoever. If we go into options, there's obviously the usual texture quality, shadow quality, ambient occlusion. There's texture filtering, so that is anisotropic filtering, obviously very welcome, very needed. Tessellation, bloom, motion blur turned off because motion blur is shitty. And then there's screen space reflections, which is ray tracing. If you want this game does support that, or at least it should support that by the time this video came out, and it's pretty damn cool, but a massive performance hit even on the highest end graphics cards available. So generally just leave this turned on and enjoy the 100+ FPS this game gives you. And then there's screen space contact, the pure hair for Nvidia, that sort of thing, volumetric lighting, lens flares, screen effects, all that good stuff. Overall, a pretty solid set of options in this option menu. Not absolutely perfect because I would have liked to have a field of view slider, and something like a colorblind mode would have been welcome, which is something that sort of baffles me it's not in. Even though they added all the extra audio options, they really haven't paid much attention to the field of view or the colorblind mode options, which would have been welcome. Go to mouse settings, there's the usual mouse sensitivity and aiming settings. It's a bit more extensive than I'm used to, but that only is positive. There's key mapping with full rebindable keys. The default key bindings are mostly okay. There's a couple of weird things that I dislike and have either removed or unbound, but overall pretty damn solid. And then there's still the eye tracking for all 5 of us that have that tool. If you have it, this game supports it. If you have it, it's pretty damn cool. I don't, so I have no comment on how good this works for Tomb Raider. So you're gonna have to ask or check with someone else that does. Overall, that's your options, that's your settings, that's everything you have. There's a photographer mode if you want to make screenshots, which is pretty damn solid. There's an online mode if you want to play multiplayer, which I will not touch because I don't care. So you're going to also have to ask someone else about that as well. But if you're here for the story, if you're here for the puzzles, if you're here for this beautiful damn world, then let's go ahead and dive into some gameplay. So when we get to gameplay for Shadow the Tomb Raider, we sort of get to a sort of dichotomy of really good gameplay, interspersed with really long cutscenes, interspersed with very linear sections, because that is sort of both the good and the bad of this title when you come down to the bottom of it. It is a really solid Tomb Raider experience, and as far as story goes, it's a really excellent story. Production quality is very high, the voice actors are amazing, and the same character that's been played Lara Croft over the last 3 games is still really damn good. And there's even a little bit of an evolution in the quality and the level of voice acting the characters have sort of experienced and been formed over the course of the last 2, and including this one, 3 games. All in all, a really solid set of experiences. And when you look at world building in general, not just graphical quality and graphical fidelity, which is obviously excellent, when you look at the overall world building, the set pieces, the jungles, the great ravines and vistas and areas and ancient cities and tombs, they are fairly diverse while still having that jungly feel, that South American feel to them, especially the Maya, Inca, etc. sort of time period-esque architecture and the like. Overall, in all of these things, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is absolutely excellent. And yet it is also very, very linear. In a Tomb Raider title, you expect a bit of linearity. We've had the same in the previous 2 games. But the amount of linearity in this title even surpasses those by quite a bit. You are forced and sort of corralled into certain sections and segments without a way to turn back, without a real good way of sort of turning around. There are some side quests, but those are far and few in between, and even they are only really timed around a specific action. They don't create any additional branching or progression of the story. So when you go to the main small village where you sort of start your first side quest actions about 2 hours into the game, you do have some side quests you can do there. There's one to help a kid that got lost, there's one to find something in the jungle, there's one for an ancient heirloom, there's one to find a hidden tomb. There's a couple of these around. But if you don't do them, if you don't touch them, you will not see the difference as compared to when you do. Rescuing the kid doesn't really add anything to the story. It doesn't create anything new in the village, doesn't add anything new in the world, and the rewards are all one-off rewards. You get a bit more money, you get a bit more resources, you get one new skill that's unlocked that you may not even be able to unlock otherwise. But that skill in itself is not going to make your gameplay experience different or better, because all the main skills, the skills required and all the tools required to jump on cliffs and hold your breath for long underwater and shoot a poisoned arrow, those are all already tied into the main area of the game, as if the developer was sort of afraid of letting the player stumble and struggle to figure out what the hell is actually necessary or what's actually going on. And that is sort of a shame when you add in the very extensive cutscenes, because some of these cutscenes can last upwards of 5 minutes, and skipping them skips the entire cutscene, suddenly finding yourself in a very different zone of the map, no idea what's going on, with a guy rushing up to you with a pickaxe trying to smash your head in. Whereas the cutscene started with you drowning in a different part of the damn continent. So not only are these cutscenes very long, there's no way to skip line by line. If you're faster like me, you don't really want to wait on a character to finish speaking their lines. You're like, yeah, I know what you're going to say. I can read the subtitles, next. But that doesn't work. You are forced to either watch the whole cutscene or you skip the entire thing and you miss big chunks of story. And even if you could split up those cutscenes, they're still very long and very detailed. And many of them sort of introduce new concepts and ideas that you need to deal with. Otherwise, you sort of are lost in what you need to do 2 minutes later when you are in the game and in the story and trying to progress further. There's a particular cutscene where you're asked to rescue a character. And if you don't watch that cutscene in full, as I didn't the first time, it doesn't mention anywhere in either the map progression or in the direction to travel or anything to do what character it is you're actually rescuing. Whereas if you watch the cutscene, it's all fairly obvious. Now you could say then just watch the cutscenes, but if you have a game with a 15-hour length, a good solid third of that is going to be sitting back watching a damn movie instead of playing a game. And if I wanted to watch a movie, then I would have watched one of the shitty Lara Croft movies, not play the really cool Lara Croft Tomb Raider game. So that's definitely, in my opinion, a very big negative of the title. Now, in terms of single-player experience and story-driven progression, the cutscenes are great. The level of quality is great, and they tie really well into the whole pace and cadence of the story. They set the tension, they set the pace, they sort of set the tone of the next bit of gameplay you're going to be experiencing. And they're really damn solid at doing that. Now, if you then go back to the world, there is this fast travel system that I've already showed in the game. And that's great for going back and doing quests and things you've skipped or maybe couldn't reach previously, or maybe you've not even cared about them at that time, you finished the main story, and you just want to go for that completionist rank. You can do so, and that is pretty damn great. What is less great is this game, and this is a critique of the previous two titles as well, of sort of locking small bits of content behind progression walls, knowing that you need to go back to them to get whatever shiny bit is there. It does so in different ways, where, for example, you need to find a very high quality knife to cut away ropes that will bind you from a tomb or an entrance or a cache with gold or crafting materials. Until halfway through the game you get that gear upgrade. And then you go back to the first map, do those two quests, and then you may actually get that. And the same applies for things like lockpicks to open chests. The same applies for a shotgun, which you only get like 90% through the story. At the very end, just before you're about to do the last set of quests to complete the game, and then you're like, oh yeah, I remember the shotgun. There were these two chests at the very damn start of the game, 2 minutes into it, that told me I needed the shotgun to get into them. And there's quite a few of these, some of them fairly hidden, some of them even in tombs hidden away where you might need 5 to 10 minutes to get back to those spots, even with fast travel. That sort of destroy the completionist desire in me. And I never liked this sort of experience in any game, but many RPGs, especially exploration games or exploration adventure games like the Tomb Raider, but even Legend of Zelda, do this insistently and continually, and it's always been a point of small frustration for me personally. That said, if you want to get that slightly linear experience and you want to go into the gameplay and into the world, this is the best in the series so far. The characters mature, the story progresses, and there's real evolution of relationships between characters, introduction of new characters that are decently fleshed out, though the main villain is basically a caricature that has no purpose in life whatsoever, and they sort of halfway between switch the main villain, and then don't switch the main villain, and then you're not sure what the hell is going on, but all you need to know is at the end of the game, you have the guy, and you have to shoot his head off, or however you want to kill him. But the rest of the characters are really good. The main sidekick, Jonah, is an excellently voiced character with excellent expressiveness even in the game, and animation quality really hits off on that. Additional side supporting characters are really well voiced and really well put together for the most part. There's a couple that feel stilted and one-dimensional, but with a wide range of characters, that is to be expected, even though if it is not there to be praised. Nonetheless, it is really damn solid. And the same applies to the world building. As I mentioned earlier, the audio quality is really damn solid, but when you take that along with the world building quality in terms of visuals and set pieces and canyons and ravines and all that stuff, it is an excellent set of places for you to explore, immerse yourself in, and get to know more about this world. Each set piece really adds flavor to it and isn't just there to be an obnoxious little wall where you have to spend more time going around it because that pads the gameplay. Everything serves a purpose, and what doesn't serve a purpose isn't really there. Cliffs, canyons, high places we can get to all serve a purpose, even if that purpose is just a challenge to jump off the highest cliff into a deep pool of water to get that achievement, to get on with your life. They serve a purpose, and they're all pretty well set together. Now, if there's one criticism you could give about the world building, is that a large part of this game takes place in the jungle. Unlike the previous two Tomb Raider games in this series, they had much more diversity in places and locales you go to over the course of a game. In this case, let's have some flashback missions into the Croft Manor, which is really cool. Most of your time is spent in the South American jungle, which boils down to lots of trees, lots of cliffs, lots of waterfalls, and lots of caves and canyons and the like. Nothing bad about it, but it does get samey after a while. One thing that doesn't get samey and never will get boring, and I feel every game after this one needs to have this, is the underwater levels. Now, I don't mean you go in a cave, you hold your breath, and you do a puzzle there, and it's sort of a timed puzzle because you'll drown. There's those. But I mean the expansive gameplay they have integrated into the underwater systems. Pulleys, levers, water levels, but beyond that, hidden pieces, hidden tunnels, hidden canyons, hidden pathways. And everything underwater has its own ecosystem. There's enemies underwater you have to hide from. There's sneak attacks you can do, and areas you can traverse around. Air pockets you can get some extra oxygen while you traverse those caves and canyons underwater, creating a whole new dimension of gameplay. Not just you standing on a cliff and then rappelling down and swinging over the edge of a void going downward, but underwater levels where you can add more of your tooling, skill set, and capabilities to really extend the gameplay options you have available. Really good overall, no complaints at all about the underwater levels. One part that actually adds more to it is the exploration features. Now you could really see me going from line to line and sort of rappelling down and up over different locations, and most of that you're already familiar with if you played the previous Tomb Raider games. Now, one of the options I displayed earlier was the way to change difficulty setting for exploration, and the main way they do that is by hiding away those indication markers of where you could climb up on a wall or hang off a cliff or rappel offward, and just having you experience and find those by looking at the game world. And that requires a really solid set, good to understand locations, very good depth perception, not just of the player, but of the game being analyzed enough that you can actually do that without just going with trial and error until you find out that one ledge you can hang off of. And the game is damn good at doing so. Now, I didn't like playing that way because I feel it's a waste of time, because I don't really like that whole exploration difficulty kind of thing. But if that is your thing, and it may well be, if you're playing a Tomb Raider game, that is damn excellent, and it creates a sort of different dimension to the gameplay, a sort of hard mode where you can really figure out and explore the world and figure out all these puzzles and locations, how to get to everything. And the same sort of thing applies to the tombs themselves. In each tomb you can highlight the survival mode or whatever the hell it's called and see what the next puzzle bit is, or where you can interact with, or even get hints about certain things happening. There's one particular tomb where there's wind blowing from the side, and on normal difficulty Lara will tell you, I need to find the winch to close this wind off. And you already know it's a winch, you know what you're looking for. On hard mode, all she will say is, oh, what a high draft. So you're left more to your own devices in that scenario than getting helpful hints either through voice or through gameplay to do those things. And the same applies for combat with regeneration and the like, but that's fairly standard in most games with combat. And this game has really removed a bit of that combat dependence and definitely removed a little bit of the run, gun, shoot, and destroy everything as you go forward that the previous Lara Croft games in this series have had to deal with. In this game, there is definitely still combat, and they have improved on that combat as well with different types of weapons or different types of combat interactions with enemies. But the vast majority of the way the game has been improved, especially, has been in the exploration and the various tombs that you have available. That is pretty damn cool. And overall, it adds quite a bit of flavor to the title in general. Now, if we talk about combat and combat experience, the combat isn't that special. If you're used to shooters or used to any third-person action game, or even take a look at God of War that came out a bit earlier this year, this is not going to hold a candle to it. But it's not bad, and the added creation of having sneak attacks and hiding your character with mud, or hiding in the water and pulling characters down with your hook, or strangling them or drowning them, All of these added things do add some flavor. But at the end of the day, if you want to really just get through the combat, you grab your machine gun, you mow down your enemies, and you move the hell on with your life. In the case of exploration, and especially in the case of puzzles and the difficulty of those puzzles, this game is really up the ante in comparison to its predecessors. And that is a pretty damn cool thing to say indeed. Now, moving away from the combat and the world interaction, I want to focus on some of the interplay with systems and graphics, because this is, I think, a very important thing. When you up the difficulty for Tomb Raider, especially when you're looking at light sources and shadows and high quality graphics, oftentimes the game gets less clear if you're playing in a high contrast area such as a cave with a flashlight, and you sort of lose what you're making track of, making it actually a deterrent to play in higher graphic settings. And this game does suffer from that quite a bit, in my opinion, especially in caves and caverns, or even when you're playing underwater in the murkier waters. It might just pay off to lower the graphic settings or lower shadow settings so you can see what the hell is actually going on, instead of something to the dark that looks great but isn't fun to play with. Now, this isn't always equally bad. In some areas, the God rays filtering in through the sunlight hitting the water and sort of dispersing the light underwater as you're diving is absolutely stunning and really adds a dimension, a sort of otherworldly quality to the gameplay. But in many cases, if you're in a cave or a cavern or swinging over a deep ravine, the ambient light coupled with the harsh light of the flashlight Lara carries does create sort of these very ugly shadows and edges, making rock surfaces or rocky areas just appear to be sort of plasticky and really fake. And that is a bit of a shame, and this is even on the highest graphical settings. Now, while we're talking about highest graphical settings, we obviously need to talk about the performance of the game. And overall, the performance is pretty good, but it is not perfect, and you'll notice that in the bigger city for sure. Once you get to that part of the game, even on the highest graphic settings, running on a 1080 Ti, as I do, you still get dips below 60, and that is just not acceptable in my opinion, and that's without ray tracing. Most of the game though, you'll be hitting 100, 120 FPS most of the time. There's obviously difficulties, and depending on your settings, that is going to fluctuate. But if you have a decent system, a 1060, 1070, 1080 card, or even a 20 series card that is out now, you will not have any problems playing on the highest graphical presets. Though you may need to turn out ray tracing or turn off something like 16 times anisotrophy to really hit that 60 FPS in the bigger areas where there's a lot of movement and there's a lot of conflicting objects and areas that has to be rendered. Especially if you're looking from a top of a high cliff over the bigger city, there's a lot to render there, and that does take its hit on performance. Pop-in wise and screen tearing wise also, I don't really have that many issues with the game. There are some minor annoyances, especially with screen tearing, but if you just use VSync or FreeSync or G-Sync, none of that should really matter, and those are becoming more and more prevalent even if they are at a premium price, in the case of G-Sync. But then you come out to pop-in and texture tearing and texture sort of replacement as you get closer to high quality textures. And this happens way too often in my opinion, that you round a corner of a building and you still see pop-in of a texture further up ahead or being replaced by a higher quality texture when you get closer to it in a very notable manner. Now, that doesn't happen always, and again, it only happens in the really larger areas where there's a lot to render. But even on a 1080 Ti, there should be enough memory bandwidth to deal with that. And it's a bit of a shame that there isn't. So my expectation is that people playing on a 1060 or 1070 equivalent card are going to experience a bit more of that experience. Is it the end of the world? No, of course not. But it definitely creates a little bit of an annoyance when you are already investing in an enthusiast grade setup that these things happen. Talking about enthusiast grade, Tobii eye tracking, as I mentioned before, I do not have experience with it, but it's always nice to see these additions here. And the same applies for some other things like controller controls and so on. Multiplayer with voice activation is also available, and that does add flavor to the game. But what really I feel adds a little bit of flavor to the game is the various outfits Lara Croft has. And that may sound really strange, but previously in Tomb Raider, you could change the outfit for the Lara Croft, but it really doesn't add or create anything of value. In this case, some outfits you can craft from previous extensions of the game add more to them. So if you like playing the sneaky, stabby person that kills their enemies by hiding in the shadows or kicking mud all over yourself and hiding in the water and just killing them that way, you can do so and add some bonuses to experience gain or even bonuses to how easy you are to find. The same applies for crafting and gathering resources, for going underwater, and so on. These are small bonuses, but they do add a little bit of flavor where you can customize your experience with Lara Croft, with the Tomb Raider, a little bit further. Now, overall, from top to bottom, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is an excellent addition to the new series. It's an excellent conclusion to the 3-story arc of the newer Tomb Raider titles, and it's a really good title overall in most cases. There are some minor negatives in relation to linearity of the story, in my opinion, and the limited impact of side quests, but if you're looking for a Tomb Raider experience where you can explore the world, see amazing vistas, solve some really cool puzzles, and find out that ancient relic, then this is definitely right up its alley, and overall, a pretty damn solid title. No real big negatives, some minor gripes, but those obviously are more about personal taste than anything inherently wrong with the title. Top to bottom, this is a fairly solid game, and I do recommend it if you enjoyed the previous two Tomb Raider titles, and if you haven't, I would suggest checking those out on a sale as well, because some of them generally get discounted like 75% off, because this is more of the same, a little bit better, a little bit prettier, but not jarring, shocking, or a revolution in any real sense. So thank you for watching. If you like this video, press that like button down below. If you didn't like this video, well, there's a dislike button for exactly that purpose, and leave a comment. Tell me what you think about Shadow of the Tomb Raider, tell me what you think on my views on it. I would love to hear all of that down in the comments below. And if you want to see more content like this on the channel, or more content in general on the channel, press that subscribe button down below, and I'll see you here next time, right here on GuyLogicGaming.